Amadeus makes the experience of travel better for everyone everywhere by inspiring innovation, partnerships, and responsibility to people, places, and planet. Our technology powers the travel and tourism industry, inspiring more open ways of working, more connected ways of thinking, centered around the traveler. Our open platform connects the global travel and hospitality ecosystem, from startups to big industry players and governments too. Together, redesigning the travel of tomorrow. Amadeus, it's how travel works. Visit us to know more, amadeus.com.
Welcome back to another exciting episode of the Skift India podcast. I'm Asia editor Pidandoma Bhutia, and today we have Madhavan Menon, Executive Chairman of Thomas Cook India, joining us. Welcome, Madhavan.
Good morning, Peyton. Thank you to you and Skift for having me on this podcast.
We are glad that you could join us. Madhavan, of course, I've spoken with you last year as well. And, last year when we spoke, you had mentioned that there is a strong demand for travel. This was just out of COVID. And then you'd said that it's not going away anytime soon. And you had also hinted that the average Indians, travel habits might change, and it wouldn't just be that one international holiday and two domestic holidays a year. Of course, we are seeing that change. We're seeing that, before our eyes, and we're seeing how India is becoming this global tourism powerhouse. Tell us how you've seen that change take place in the last 1 year since we spoke.
So, Peyton, I must admit that this is one speculation I got right. I get it wrong fairly often. But the reality is, I think the signs were all there to see. So what we witnessed in the months after we spoke last is not a surprise. However, I think some trends have become very clear to us. And let me sort of list them out. The first one is obviously, I think the average traveler in India has shifted post pandemic from being a saver to a spender, and that's actually been witnessed by the new segments of customers that we are seeing approaching us. We're seeing a younger age-wise, much younger, almost 10 years from our old customer profiles. We're seeing people who are eager. I don't know whether I should call it hungry, but people who are eager to go on holidays. And that's the first change that we've witnessed. We are witnessing, with accompanying this younger generation appearing on the spectrum of the travel industry in India. We actually see it's being facilitated by the digitization of India. I mean, this is a much spoken story, but the reality is, like every other industry, the B2C segments, we are witnessing the same sort of trend where we're seeing people approach us both digitally to start the conversation or somewhere in between a conversation. But we're seeing that trend flow through. And, I think thanks to the fact that India has moved digitally, we also use the pandemic to sort of upgrade our systems so that customers could approach us in any of our business segments, either online through a contact center, and we were able to deal with them to meet their aspirations. So I think second important element. The third important element, which I think is extremely important, is earlier people had hesitations asking for EMIs or even loans to travel. But this is a new trend, early days. But we are seeing people asking us if EMIs are available. I must tell you, that we've had EMIs available forever, but nobody ever used it. We've contracted with multiple NBFCs to make loans available. Nobody used it, but suddenly this trend has changed, and we are seeing some of it appear.
Yeah, I
Another,
guess. Madhavan, earlier when we saw EMIs, EMI was always associated with, when you buy a house, taking a loan for a house, or when you buy a car. I think EMI was mostly associated with those assets. But now you're saying that, people are changing it. They're taking loans even for travel.
Absolutely. So, what you saw earlier was loans or EMIs, free EMIs on tangible assets. Now you're beginning to see the shift to intangible assets. And I'm pretty sure that we are not the only ones. There are other industries, especially insurance, across auto, across health, which are witnessing the same sort of move. So, I think travel is witnessing that move. Another segment is this whole conversation around experimental travel. It's called in multiple things in India, but people are talking about motorcycle rides from Leh across the entire northern spectrum. Um, you're
So
seeing,
Leh would be the
yeah,
topmost portion of
yeah.
India, the northern part of it.
Glamping is the other new segment where people are saying, "Oh, we're willing to." I mean, a couple of years ago, if you asked me whether Indian tourists would accept a tent, my answer would have been no. But today, they're actually asking us, and we're even seeing. Recently, heard on the Sterling board that they're asking us, "Aren't you going to do the same thing?" So, I think that experimental, be it. Using motorcycles, being glamping, going to new places, trekking. These are all the new trends that we are witnessing. Of course, my colleagues call it YOLO. I didn't know this word a short while ago, and somebody had to explain to me that you only live once. I'm of the generation where we saw the movie You Only to Live Twice, but there is obviously a new one. And lastly, multiple holidays, which is what I talked about right in the beginning today, about being hungry for holidays. And I think that's manifesting itself in weekends, short holidays, long holidays, all sorts of things. And we witnessed this at Thomas Cook and SOTC across the entire
Yes,
spectrum.
of course, Madhavan. And of course, the demand for travel, like you said, has remained robust. We thought that everybody was saying that this is something that has come out of COVID, but we are seeing that the demand is not plateauing at any time. It's only rising. And in spite of the fluctuations in airfares, also, we've noticed that flights are consistently full. But I would also like to point out to the fact that that's where Thomas Cook has also launched these India's incredible short breaks. This is, I think, to increasingly cater to the growing need for short vacations and quick getaways. Can you tell us a little bit more about it, and also about the factors contributing to this travel boom?
Look, I think it stems from the fact that the impact of the pandemic is far greater than any of us even, I think, realize, and it's manifesting itself. Obviously, it's manifested itself in the travel space. Now, if you look at the younger generation, the aspirations are different. So you've got the new traveler who most probably traveled by bus or by train somewhere, now suddenly saying, "Look, I'm not interested in short haul travel. Tell me, how do I get across the country?" And domestic tourism is the primary driver around this. So seeing this demand, and I must take you back to a point. I think when we talked the last time, I talked about how cruising was the first signal that we saw of this with the Cordelia.
Correct.
And this goes back to the year 2021 when Cordelia was launched. None of us were sure, but we ended up selling more holidays on the Cordelia in 21 than we did of anything else. The second trend that we saw was thanks to all the influencers and the actors who went to the Maldives. Uh, Thomas Cook and
Correct.
SVC had never seriously sold the Maldives prior to that. And suddenly we found ourselves to be the largest provider of holidays in the Maldives. and this is information provided to us by the Maldivian Tourism Organization. So that was a start, but now we are seeing demand. It's not the well sort of trodden routes like Leh, Kashmir, Andamans, and Kerala, but we are seeing demand across the segment. So we decided that instead of just letting customers ask us what they want, we decided to put out this sort of new product that mixed, I must admit, mixed and matched both domestic as well as international journeys, and that was driven by airfares. Because if you looked at traveling on the trunk routes in India, on days during the week, you'll actually find that some of those fares match fares into Thailand, into Dubai,
Correct. Absolutely.
locations. So people sort of overcame that barrier. High airfares help people overcome that barrier that I can only travel within India. People are actually traveling out of India. And today, you hear about people flying to Thailand for a weekend. I just spoke to someone yesterday who told me that over one of these long weekends, they went on the Thursday night and came back on the Monday night. And unheard of maybe a couple of years ago, with the exception of the well-heeled who could travel. Now we are hearing ordinary people say that they're willing to go to Thailand for a weekend. They could go to Dubai for a weekend. The other significant change we witnessed is Dubai. If I don't know if you remember, but up to about 2018, it was around the shopping festival in Dubai, which used to be
Yes.
in
Yes.
February and March. Today, people are talking about 12 month. Across the 12 months, people are traveling to Dubai. It can be a weekend, it can be 4 days, it can be 7 days. So, I think we are witnessing a dramatic change in both the aspirations of travelers as well as the options available, despite all these other constraints like airfares.
Amadeus makes the experience of travel better for everyone everywhere by inspiring innovation, partnerships, and responsibility to people, places, and planet. Our technology powers the travel and tourism industry, inspiring more open ways of working, more connected ways of thinking, centered around the traveler. Our open platform connects the global travel and hospitality ecosystem, from startups to big industry players and governments too. Together, redesigning the travel of tomorrow. Amadeus, it's how travel works. Visit us to know more, amadeus.com.
Madhavan, it's interesting that when you pointed out about destinations, you've mentioned Dubai and you've mentioned Thailand. Now, just taking from your earnings call, Thomas Cook, of course, had an exceptional April to June quarter this year. I think you've got almost full recovery across most of your businesses, except travel services. Now, in the earnings call, I remember you saying clearly that this is mainly due to the delays in visa processing, which has been a major challenge in this aspect. And I think the destinations that you mentioned, be it Dubai or Thailand, have much easier visa policies. So, can you tell me a little bit more about this? And do you see this visa challenge easing at any point in time? Or do you think that it's going to take? Because if you see now, the wait time for the visas are really long.
So, Peyton, I've got to balance my response to you because I don't want to upset my partners on either side of the spectrum. No, look, I think the initial delays in visas resulted in creating what was the easy visa or no visa segment. And Indians, we've all grown up in the belief that you needed a visa to go everywhere. I read recently that there are 36 countries around the world where we don't need visas, which is a very interesting development. But the easy visa segment actually covered Southeast Asia and possibly the UAE, both Dubai and Abu Dhabi being the primary beneficiaries in the Middle East for this. But of late, we are now seeing Kazakhstan, we're seeing Uzbekistan, we're seeing Georgia, we're seeing all these other countries appear on this easy visa segment. or it is you can get a visa very quickly. Go online, you get a 24-hour turnaround. So it's not as if just you can land there and you get a visa on arrival, but even the access has improved. So that is one segment. As far as the availability of visas on the long haul is where I think we had our fair share of problems. And in all fairness, the embassies needed to scale up post pandemic. I think a lot of them have scaled up. So, delays in Europe have declined significantly. Some countries continue to have it. And I think what we're facing, the problem is that with new resources having come into these embassies, the scrutiny levels have gone up, and therefore the rejection rates have also gone up. But I think that will settle down over a period of time. My expectation is by the year end, we would have sorted out all the glitches around visas being available in Europe. Australia, by the way, has actually overcome a lot of this, and visas are readily available. Japan, which used to be a nightmare getting visas, suddenly has become very easy. So, we're seeing multiple things happen. The one question mark that remains is US visas. I honestly don't know when the US is going to solve this problem, but visa problems or no problems. Talk to the people at the airlines that service the United States. They'll tell you there are no shortage of bookings on this segment. So, there are a lot of Indian people who have long-term visas into the US and therefore are traveling.
Yes, correct.
That's the visa front. But I think 2024 will see a significant easing. And when I say easing, it's the ease to get a visa. I think the second most important element is the fact that rejections obviously come down because people are trained more adequately and can recognize things. And lastly, my expectation is that with the EU expanding and with new countries offering that opportunity, you will see a broadening of the spectrum of holidays. So, for example, you take Hungary, is the new kid on the block issuing Schengen visas. So you'll see more people traveling into the old erstwhile Eastern Europe. So you're going to see that. You're going to see Central Asia becoming another popular destination. So these are all things. I mean, for example, the other day somebody told me, "Are you aware of the historical element that is available in Tashkent and Samarkand?" Didn't know. But the reality,
Correct.
people are discovering all these things. And so, I think we will overcome the visa problem partly through improved servicing, partly through new countries emerging on the horizon. At the same time, people choosing countries where they can get visas easily. So, so it broadens the spectrum entirely.
Correct. And Madhavan, I think this is also a message to every destination that, of course, we know that Indian outbound tourism is becoming a force to reckon with. And if you want Indian tourists, the only thing that you need to do is, ease the visa process, because people are hungry, people want to travel. And if you want to get Indian tourists, just ease the visa process a bit, right?
Absolutely. I must tell you that in all my travels, always, the Indian tourist pre-pandemic was not always a welcome source of
Absolutely.
business. And now you talk to anybody in Southeast Asia and the Middle East, they're hungry for Indian tourists. Now I don't know how long this will last, but it depends entirely on when the Chinese, the famous saying, the Chinese, instead of the Russians are coming, it's now the Chinese are coming.
But I think it will take some time for the Chinese to come, because we're seeing that in
Yeah,
spite of the easing of norms,
yeah,
they are not really traveling the way. I think it's a lot to do with the economic situation and a lot of other geopolitical concerns as well. But
absolutely.
yes,
Absolutely. So I
um,
think that is going to continue for a lot longer. But, that's going to impact Southeast Asia pretty badly because,
yes.
we Indians travel to Southeast Asia, but we don't use it as regularly as the Chinese did. And I think some markets in Southeast Asia are going to get affected by that.
You're correct. But when we talk about India, Madhavan, we've seen, of course, you've seen great demand coming from India. But what is also noteworthy is that this demand that is coming is not just from the major cities, isn't it? We've seen emerging demand from smaller cities as well. That the you know, and it indicates that the desire to travel is widespread and it's not just limited to the metros or the mini metros.
Absolutely. If I use the pandemic as an analogy, look at how fast it spread. The thirst to travel both domestically and short haul is really spreading. I mean, just to give you an idea, both at Thomas Cook and SOTC, the incidence of regional advertising in regional languages has just shot through the are in terms of the amount of advertising we do, because we recognize the demand from these markets is much higher. I think we must also give credit to the domestic airline industry, because connectivity today is, earlier if you wanted to travel to, let's say, somewhere in Odisha, you would have had to go to Calcutta and then connect. Today, you can land in two locations, Bhubaneswar and Puri, directly from Mumbai without even hesitation. You can land in Tirupati has been around, but if you had to travel to Vizag earlier, you couldn't fly directly to Vizag. There were limited flights into the Andamans. All this has changed. I mean, so I think people are, and both Indigo obviously has done a lot of work. But if you look at Air India is now beginning to connect various cities in India on the long haul. For example, look at Cochin, look at Goa. Air India operates 4 flights a week or something like that to each of these cities out of the UK. These open up markets for us, because people will travel from these segments, from these locations into the long haul as well as the short haul. I mean, short haul adequately taken care of, but long haul coming in is going to make a difference. And look, I think we are maybe 12 months away from some of these cities being serviced into the US, maybe with one stop, but nothing more than one stop. And these are straight out of the country and into the United States. So, I think we're going to see a complete change in this whole spectrum of what people, how people will travel. It is not restricted to Mumbai, Delhi, Bangalore, or maybe Chennai.
Correct.
Uh,
Absolutely.
that is no longer the issue. And as visas come closer, I think people will have to make a trip to one of these cities to get their visas. But beyond that, I don't think they'll need to travel to the city to exit India anymore.
Absolutely. And that's a very important insight as well, Madhavan. Um, now let's talk about a bit about the role of the government, because, of course, Thomas Cook has Thomas Cook SOTC, but you also have CETA. You also have, one of the biggest inbound companies. How do you see the government's involvement in the inbound tourism landscape, especially considering India's status as a long haul destination? Because in the past, there have been delays and indecision that led to a decline in inbound arrivals, as travelers were choosing more affordable destinations. Currently, the hotel rates in Southeast Asia, which is our competing market, is a bit higher. So this also presents a golden opportunity for India to attract travelers with competitive pricing. Don't you think so?
I do, Pin, but I think, from a government's point of view, they have multiple concerns that they have to address in terms of visa issuance. And I think every government has this problem. Right? We're not the only ones. But, what I would believe is that the government of India has eased visa issuance to a new level. We've never seen this before. And if you look at CETA, they will tell you that their forward bookings out of the UK have just gone sky high. Europe is still struggling, but I think that will follow in due course. The reality is, I think India as an inbound destination is grossly underdimensioned, purely because it has been viewed as a bit of an exotic destination, despite us coming into the forefront. I hope this entire G20 activity, as well as all the publicity that we seem to have, both negative and positive in the West, will actually make India a more attractive destination for two reasons. One, availability of flights. And if you look at any source markets flights into India, India has actually been one of the fastest that has gone back to pre-COVID. Talk to the guys out of the UK, that's both British Airways and Virgin, they will tell you that. Look at the way Air India is servicing North America. It has more flights today than it has ever had. If you look at Southeast Asia, Singapore Airlines, Middle East, these are all people who have put back capacity into this market. There are exceptions, like the European airlines, which are taking their own sweet time. So be it. It doesn't matter, because all these other airlines are actually providing capacity. Mind you, India, because of some of these problems, is still serviced at about 20% lower than pre-pandemic in terms of seat capacity. But that's not a problem. I think India will benefit from the G20. India will benefit from various other factors. We are very visible in the world today for many right reasons and some wrong reasons. But the reality is the visibility India has is huge. And we are witnessing it in our forward bookings, Pin. And I have no doubt that 24 will be a return to normalcy as far as inbound tourism into India is concerned. And, being a TCI, Sita being the largest inbound player, has already started witnessing this. And I think it is aligned with some of the global trends, especially what we are witnessing in Southeast Asia also.
Thank you. Thank you so much for highlighting that, Madhavan. It's clear that there's a lot of potential for India in both the inbound and the outbound tourism sector. And we appreciate your insights on the industry's current dynamics and future prospects. And that wraps up another episode of the Skift India podcast. We hope you found this conversation with Madhavan Menon as engaging as we did. Stay tuned for more such conversations, and remember to subscribe to the Skift India podcast on your favorite listening app. Thank you, Madhavan.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Bill.
This has been the Skift India Travel Podcast. Thank you for listening.